So I've just turned 34 and I've been working in the finance world for nearly 15 years as an accountant and then as an investment analyst. And I need to be honest with you, sometimes there are truths that you just have to hear. So these are 40 money truths I wish I'd known in my 20s. Do the smart thing and learn from my mistakes and the mistakes I see people make time and time and time again. So let's start with an important one to kick us off. You are almost certainly focusing on the wrong things. There's plenty of nonsense about how you should drink less coffee, switch your current account to get a fraction of a single % more in interest. But whilst all this can undoubtedly help, it's not the big picture and inevitably takes up way more time in your lives than it really should do. And by contrast, when do you hear people talk about reducing their investing fees on their pension or aiming to increase their investing rate by 0.5% every single year? Almost never, right? And I guarantee either of those things will make more of a difference to your financial life than if you never bought a cup of coffee for the rest of time. Focus on the things that are going to make a material difference in your life. Things that are really going to move the needle rather than just trimming around the edges. You use debt the wrong way. See, most people will use debt to buy liabilities that will depreciate in value, whereas smarter people will use it to buy assets that will increase in value. That's not necessarily me giving you license to go out and put a deposit for a rental property down on a credit card. Obviously, that's insane. But making sure that you're using debt in a sensible way is really one of the key things that separates people who are financially smart to those who are financially illiterate. Next is you have no idea how to spend money. Now, don't get me wrong, with record credit card debt and everyone seemingly driving around in new cars at extortionate rates, all this is evidence that people are good at spending a lot of money, but they aren't too good at making sure that they get the most from their money when they actually spend it. We've always said on this channel that spending money is a skill. Knowing when you should pay a little bit more to get a lot more, understanding you can only spend your money once and therefore why it's so important to spend it wisely. Cutting the cost no matter the cost is rarely a sound money strategy. Instead, focus on two things when you're going to spend more than, let's say, a day's pay. Consider the marginal cost. What is the marginal gain you get by spending a bit more? And is it worth it? Buying cheap tyres for your car that aren't as good? Probably not worth it. And secondly, consider the opportunity cost. What else could you be doing with this money and is there a better use for it? If you've maxed your pension contributions, you have no debt, you have a fully funded emergency fund, then the opportunity cost of buying a convertible is not the same as someone who hasn't done any of those things. The money advice your parents give is trash. This is not a personal attack on your great granny, I'm sure she's great, but the truth is that boomers and the generations that came before them grew up in entirely different economic times, where pensions were more generous, houses were much cheaper, and a job for life was actually like a thing. And it was entirely possible to buy a house and raise a family on a single income. Now, clearly, I'm not going to go into great detail about why none of that is true anymore. But most importantly, as the times change, it's important that you make sure you change your financial plans and how you make your money decisions. So if your granny, and I'm sure she's a great lady, tells you to make sure you're saving for retirement and to put that money in your piggy bank, just nod and accept. Next up, don't forget to have fun and enjoy the now. Not everything in life has to be focused on the future. Life exists beyond your spreadsheets and your retirement goals. Whilst many financial lessons revolve around planning early and acting on opportunities sooner rather than later, it's not always the best approach. There should still be some room left in your 20s to actually enjoy your 20s. It's a decade of your life where you have limited responsibilities like a family or a mortgage to worry about. So whilst you should obviously be planning for the future and making good financial decisions, don't let it completely compromise your 20s. Time isn't always your ally. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. And I'm not just talking about money here. I'm talking about financial education, how you form your money habits, your investing account. All of them will benefit from compound interest. So making a strong start in your 20s will make the rest of your financial life just so much easier. Next up, your retirement is your problem. With governments around the world wondering how they're going to pay for the pensions of all these people who are living longer, gradually state pensions are going to have to get less and less generous. And so ultimately the onus falls on you to decide how you're going to fund your retirement. And therefore, once again, we find ourselves living in an age where you can't rely on what previous generations have been able to rely on for financial planning and for retirement. I'd rather have prepared to fund my own retirement and then if the state pension still exists, to just have a bit of extra money rather than to not have it at all. Investing is boring. Investing should be boring. It's like watching grass grow. Now, this is directly contradictory to investing as it's portrayed in films and TV, with people screaming like lunatics at 100 red and green screens, Leonardo DiCaprio scrolling around with a monkey and driving fast cars. For almost everybody in the world, the best kind of investing is the most boring kind of investing. For example, after analysing the portfolios of 325,000 users, the robo-advisor SigFig found something really, really interesting. The most successful investors are the ones who traded the least. but you still have to invest. You should care about fees more than you probably do now. So if I told you that I was considering two different pension fund providers, one of them charged an investing fee of 1% and another charged an investing fee of 2%, you'd probably just say, well, what's the big deal? It's only 1% difference in fee. That doesn't sound too bad. But the short answer is you'd be just super, super wrong, unfortunately. And let's run the numbers on this to really illustrate it. Say you invest £100 per month from the age of 18 to 65 all the way up to retirement. And let's, for argument's sake, say you have an average 10% return. If I give you a second, what do you think the difference in the two fund sizes would be by the time you hit 65? 10k, 20k, 50k, 100k? Nope, you're dead wrong. Way wrong, I should imagine. The difference in value would be £221,631, a truly staggering amount of money. And let's just quickly run through the numbers. The fund with a 1% fee would be worth £788,402 at retirement, and the fund with a 2% fee would be worth £566,771. And this is the thing really, the same compounding force of nature that allows your investments to grow over time and help build your wealth is also going to be the same thing that will erode the value of your investments over time when it comes to fees. When it comes to your pensions, a small change in fees over a longer time horizon can make a massive difference. Next up, someone always has more money than you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you wanting to strive for wealth, to want to be financially secure and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And if you want to be the richest person you know, then that's also fine. But if every story of your coworker's vacation or a friend's new car or your neighbor's new holiday home makes you feel inadequate, then you're going to be on a really difficult path. And I like this quote about why living beyond your means to keep up with the proverbial Joneses is always going to be a problem. People live as though they have more income than they actually do, and in order to do that, they cut out retirement savings. People do it to impress other people, but it's a questionable reason due to the spotlight effect. In reality, very few people even notice the car you drive or the clothes you wear, and even fewer really care. And I would always add to this that you have no idea what's going on with people's personal finances. The guy you work with who turned up in a brand new car, broke, just flat broke, leased the car, paid for the deposit on a credit card, or has got rich parents who bought it for him. And here's the other thing. Social media is people's personal propaganda. Everyone will show you their trips to Dubai, eating at some god-awful steak restaurant, but nobody will show you that they are neck deep in their overdraft to do it. All debts aren't equal. There is bad and worse. Now, you can argue that all debts are bad, but I think it's probably more accurate to say that there are some that are bad and some that are worse. And on this channel, we don't necessarily advocate for having no debt. I think having a mortgage is a perfectly reasonable kind of debt, for example. But people use debt for all the wrong sorts of things, or they use the wrong kind of debt to impress people they don't like. So before you take on any debt, really carefully consider it and ask yourself two things. Is the debt worth it? And if you do have to take it on, is it the right kind of debt? Next up, money alone probably won't make you happy. It doesn't feel too controversial to say that happiness is largely subjective, and depending on who you ask, money may or may not help to buy it. And there's plenty of research that finds that money can increase your happiness, but up to a point and no further. The best publicized example is from the States. A study in 2010 found that about $75,000 is the peak point at which additional money doesn't necessarily add to happiness. Well, it's 83 grand if you actually include inflation. And what the paper basically finds is that salary improvements above that have a marginal gain on overall happiness. No one cares as much about your money as you do. There's this quote from Get Rich Slowly. One of the most powerful lessons you can learn is that nobody cares more about your money than you do. When you realize this, when you take responsibility for making your own financial decisions, it can bring a tremendous sense of power and control to your life. Next up, simple money beats smart money. There is simply no point trying to come up with the most complex investing strategies in order to try and beat the market, which you will do inconsistently, especially when you compare it to the prospect of setting up an automated deposit that drops money into your tax-advantaged investment account every single month. As soon as it drops in your account, it goes straight into your investing account. So do exactly that. Automate as much as you can your saving and investing so that you become a consistent investor and not a sporadic saver. Don't let perfection get in the way of progress. People end up with analysis paralysis all the time. They wait for the world to align before they really go for their goals. And this is absolutely true of people's money goals too. When I hit this salary, then I'll open an investment account. When my business does this much in revenue, then I'll open a pension. Does that sound familiar? If that's you, then don't wait for everything to be absolutely perfect. Making progress on your money goals is going to be much more important than waiting for the stars to align and for it to be perfect. So don't put off money goals before it's too late. Compound interest needs time to get out of bed and stretch its legs so it can really go to work for you. So make sure you give it an early start. You get what you pay. Warren Buffett often says, price is what you pay, value is what you get. So when you're buying something, you really need to understand this relationship between price and value. Shockingly, a $5,000 runaround car that gets you to the station still gets you to the station, and probably in the same time as a $100,000 V8 convertible. But when someone opens their door on your $5,000 car, it's not the end of the world. But alternatively, if you had to choose between the cheapest possible accountant who's just running a production line and the one who's a bit more expensive but can give you tax advice, then that's worth spending a bit more money on. The key is knowing which is which. Company loyalty doesn't always translate into promotions. Now, this might be an arrangement that works for some people, but the vast majority of workers in the modern workplace will find that company loyalty won't necessarily translate into rapid and consistent pay bumps or great promotion opportunities. And this is borne out by this study from Forbes in 2014, which found that people who move jobs every 2 years on average earned twice those who were job lifers and stayed in the same company for extended periods of time. Now, if you're fresh out of university, one of the key things that you might want to do is to accumulate a whole series of skills which you can then take to a new job and then use that as leverage. And I think it's also worth pointing out at this stage that those jobs, like being a partner at a law firm or something like that, that has a linear and consistent promotional opportunity, they are generally very, very competitive. Next up, you should definitely have life insurance. Now, whilst you don't wish for bad things to happen, unfortunately they do. And I think it will always be sound advice to have insurance and have protections in place rather than to not. Now, in the realm of financial planning, insurance often doesn't grab the headlines like the more glamorous topics like saving and investing. But the truth is, when unexpected events threaten to derail even the most meticulously laid out money plans, the importance of insurance cannot be understated. And this is even more important if you have people who financially rely on you. So whether it's protecting your home from damage or safeguarding your health, you don't want to be in a situation where a single incident can wipe you out financially and leave you in financial despair. And think about it this way. We've talked a lot about how investing is accumulating wealth, but insurance is all about safeguarding that wealth and protecting it for the future. So really think about the policies you have in place and make sure you have as many situations accounted for as possible. Budgeting is more than just a planning task. Now, I see this all the time, that people misuse budgets, and as a result, they don't stick to them. They assume that a budget is there to be a fun sponge in their lives, but the truth is that a budget can do so much more than that when you do it properly. Budgeting should be a constantly evolving task. Monitoring your income in real time and taking steps to shore up leaks in your budget can just really take it to the next level. And the truth is that for the most part, if you don't want to have a line item budget, abiding by the 50-30-20 rule can be all you need to succeed with your money. 50% of your after-tax income on your needs, 30% on your wants, and 20% of your saving and investing. A great start to make. If you're relying on a single paycheck, then you're living a risky life. Warren Buffett said, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. And the notion here is kind of pretty simple, that if you have a single source of income and you lose that income, then you could potentially be just a couple of paychecks away from a complete financial disaster. So having either a side hustle that you can have to help supplement your income or a well-funded emergency fund can be absolutely critical in helping you to buy some time to make a decision about what you're going to do for your next steps. But importantly, making sure it's the right decision for you rather than having to make a decision because you have no choice. Your chosen career path is really a financial decision. We've touched on this a little bit, but it's easy to think about your career as basically just your future work opportunity. But the truth is, the decision about whether you want to be a vet, an accountant, or electrician is primarily a financial choice. Your salary for most people will be the primary way that you build your wealth, so you should give it a good amount of consideration. Really give this decision the respect it deserves and plan your life accordingly. Little habits become major returns. How many people get fit by spending 24 hours straight in the gym once a year? Absolutely nobody. But how many people get fit by doing 10,000 steps a day, not snacking after 7, or going to the gym 3 times a week? It's easy to assume that big changes and grand trades in your life will improve your finances, but honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is that, as we say on this channel, it's the consistent application of good financial habits that will ultimately determine your success with money. So integrating small financial habits today can translate into powerful returns later on. Think about when it comes to saving, for instance. The potency of compound interest makes every year more valuable than the last. Next up, relying on financial willpower will lead you to failure. Would you be at all surprised if I told you that there was this study here from Ohio State University in 2023? Research suggests that only 9% of Americans who make New Year's resolutions successfully achieve them. Notably, 23% abandon their resolutions by the end of the first week, and 43% by the end of January. So what does this tell us? that relying on financial willpower to achieve your money goals is a high-risk strategy. And the evidence really backs this up, which basically just means that most people will fail. The inescapable thing here is that it's not just to rely on your financial willpower or rely on when you remember. So here's what you do. The day you get paid, have an automated deposit go straight from that account into your saving and investing account. This on its own can be the absolute cornerstone when it comes to building wealth. So we're just about halfway. I know that there's a lot of information here, but keep at it. Let's get through this. There's more good information to come. If you aren't wealthy at 20, it's not your fault, but at 70, it probably is your fault. We've just talked about this, but everyone's prime age is said to be their 20s, but that doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out. There's only a very small chance that you'll end up being wealthy in your 20s, even if that's something like an inheritance or a lottery win. We all know that those odds are quite slim. Wealth isn't something that can come from an overnight success. It's a process of compounding your income over time, matched with good financial habits that will improve your chances of success over the long term. But we live in a time of low fees, and when it's never been easier to get started with investing, that just small amounts away every single month can make a big difference. It's something we talk a lot about on the channel, but it really can help. The most important investment you can make is in yourself. Think about it. The greatest investment you can make in the world is yourself, not rental properties or the stock market or some rinky-dink startup. Investing in yourself is the number one rate of return. The number one way to earn a big paycheck is to constantly transform yourself so you are constantly learning, accumulating new knowledge and new experiences which you can then sell to people. And this is also an investment you have complete control over. Next up, you cannot out-earn poor spending habits. It almost goes without saying, but no matter how much money you make, poor spending habits can keep you in a state of constantly being broke. You think if you just make a bit more money, then you'll be on an even footing. But the truth is that unless you can check your bad money habits at the door, then the chances are you'll just spend more money on those bad money habits. Budgeting isn't just for those who are on limited incomes. It's essential for pretty much everyone on the income spectrum. Living within your means and spending less than you earn is the foundation of financial freedom, and it's just harder to do if you have bad money habits coming with you. Financial independence requires discipline. So achieving financial independence is a goal for loads of people. But the truth is that it really requires a lot of discipline and dedication in order to get there. This is things like making tough decisions today to prioritize your future income over your current spending. It's delaying what you want to spend your money on now compared to what you could save on in the future. But here's the good news. That discipline in your money life often separates those who achieve financial independence from those people who don't. So a little bit of discipline can go such a long way. Debt doesn't disappear on its own. It doesn't matter what kind of debt it is. Sticking your head in the sand and hoping that it will go away is not a debt repayment strategy. You need to create a plan for how to get back to reducing that debt from 1 month to the next. And as we've already talked about, the thing about debt is that the longer you wait to pay it off, the worse it'll get because of the interest. You can use the snowball method, where you rank your debt in order of size and start with the smallest debt. Pay off this one first. That helps you build a kind of psychological momentum. Or there's the avalanche method, where you take the highest interest debt first and pay that off. In theory, you'll pay less interest over time, but it can be another alternative way to pay off your debt. You should have a will. Now, it can seem a long way off, and I hope that it is, but bad things happen. And should the worst happen, you want to have a will in place. This will make sure you aren't spending a fortune on inheritance tax, but also make sure that your wishes can be adhered to. You probably won't beat the market. Finding the next Warren Buffett is not impossible, but it is highly improbable. So let's work on that. And the truth is, even Warren Buffett says not to be like him. Warren Buffett is widely considered to be one of the greatest investors in history, but he's a big fan of the index fund. Going so far in his 2013 letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders, he said this of his will: "My advice to the trustee could not be more simple. Put 10% of cash in short-term government bonds and 90% in a very low-cost S&P 500 index funds." And he compares himself to a golfer. If you can make par every time you played in investing returns, making par is comparable to buying a low-cost index fund. You may not make any hole-in-ones by investing in a low-cost index fund, but you also probably won't lose money as rapidly or dramatically. Next up, money won't solve all your problems. I think it's fair to say it is a common misconception that having more money will solve all your problems. And whilst it is true to say that money can alleviate many of your financial stresses, it's not necessarily a panacea for all of life's other challenges. Understanding this can really help maintain a more balanced perspective on what money can and cannot do. You're not patient enough. Every once in a while, like with a meme stock, the stock market turns a handful of people into millionaires seemingly overnight. But the truth is, These rags to riches stories are definitely the exception and not the rule when it comes to investing. The best investing strategy isn't to cross your fingers and hope for a random spike in stock prices. Instead, your odds of success are much higher if you make careful decisions about when, where, and how to invest. And just remember that successfully growing your wealth like this requires commitment to being as patient as possible. Next up, you'll never time the market correctly. Nobody knows when the market will go up, down, left, right, forwards, backwards, sideways. And this is regardless of the endless stream of pundits that you see on TV or all over the internet. Yes, obviously you can scroll social media or follow a stock market forecaster in the hopes of being able to time your returns better. But the research has shown this all the time and time again, that the odds of successfully timing the market are slim. You're much, much better off investing regularly over long periods of time and simply waiting for the stock market to deliver those returns as the economy grows over time. Next, your salary is always negotiable. Now, there is a bit of taboo when it comes to discussing salary and benefits when it gets to work. So when it comes to changing jobs or your annual review, managers might let on that they aren't happy with these types of conversations, but the reality is that virtually everything is negotiable, including your salary, and it's not a rude or unexpected gesture to negotiate your salary. In fact, one survey by Robert Half found that 70% of managers expect job candidates to negotiate. So while these conversations may intimidate you and they can be awkward, God only knows I've been in them, knowing that your future employer is no stranger to these negotiations. And there's even more evidence. According to a Fidelity study, negotiating works. While the research found less than half of Americans negotiated their current salary, among those who counted on their salary, benefits, or other compensation, 85% got at least some or all of what they asked for. And this is why negotiating is so important. The earlier you are in your career, the even more important this is. Accepting $5,000 less in a starting salary can add up to a loss of over $600,000 over 40 years of employment, according to a study from the University of Missouri. And that's because of the compounding effect of pay rises over time. So if you're young, negotiating your salary can be an absolutely fundamental and key strategy. Social media is a terrible place for stock tips. So social media is generally one of the worst places to get good, trustworthy investment advice for a whole host of reasons. And just to give you an example, people who brag about their gains on social media rarely post about their losses, as we've kind of already talked about. And this gives you a really skewed perspective on how good or bad they might be at actually picking their investments. So remember, when you're hearing it, you're only hearing a part of the story. You're unlikely to get rich quick. We've talked about him before, but Warren Buffett hit millionaire status by the time he was 30. But that doesn't mean it happened overnight. It was quite the opposite, in fact. He started investing at the age of 10, meaning that his investments had a lot of time to grow. So whilst it is true that he's a shrewd stock picker, it's also true to say that he's in his 90s, and so this has given compound interest at the best possible time and the longest time horizon to be able to work for him. So when you're reading news stories about investors who got rich through crypto investments, the odds are invariably you won't be that successful. You probably trade too much. So some traders and some investors claim that the best way to make money in the stock market is to closely follow market trends. That way you can buy and sell based on the direction of the stock on that given day. But the truth is that decades of academic research have shown us that those who trade most often invariably have the worst possible results. Your expectations should be more realistic. The famous investor Peter Lynch once said, "The key organ in your body in the stock market is your stomach, it's not your brain." When you invest in stocks, you'll have good years and bad years, and some of those bad years will be absolutely stomach churning. But here's the truth, that over time you'll very likely build wealth if you remain invested and you remain consistent. But this comes with a caveat. You must be realistic about your expectations. The road to riches is not necessarily a straight path. Twists and turns all over the place, but stay the course. You're investing money you'll need soon. When you're ready to invest, you should have a healthy amount of cash in your emergency fund, a savings account that's preferably high interest, which you can dip into for those unexpected expenses as they come in. So make sure that you have your fully funded emergency fund in place first before you start investing. It's pointless putting money into an investment account and then having to pull that money out when stocks might be doing well to fund something which might have been entirely predictable. Your investing goals probably aren't clear. So you should really see money as a tool for meeting other goals, not just simply a way of looking to make more money. So when you're thinking about your investment goals, consider how they intersect with your personal life and your other plans that you have for things that you want to do. A good way to start is by writing down all of your various money goals and how you're going to measure your progress. It doesn't necessarily have to be investing related. Maybe it's paying off your mortgage, maybe it's paying down some debt. Just coming up with a way to measure it can be a really key aspect to it. You keep delaying investing altogether. Maybe you're scared, maybe you're waiting for things to be perfect, or maybe you're just being wise. Just remember that the choice to never invest at all is also a really costly mistake. Keeping all your cash in a bank account means that your money is losing purchasing power over time due to inflation. So the truth is, if you find yourself being overwhelmed, just take it step by step, start with little amounts and build up to it. Chances are you don't know enough about money. But, and here's the good news, you're in the right place. You're taking one of the first really key steps at an early age and as early as possible to start making sensible financial decisions. So what's the main takeaway? You're here, you're watching this channel, you're watching your video, and therefore you're learning. There is so much evidence that people who have improved financial literacy make better financial decisions. They are richer, they retire earlier, and they use money in a smart way. So this can be one of the turning points that can make such a big difference. Setting yourself up for good money decisions in your 20s can set you up for the rest of your life. So thanks very much for watching. This is Modern Money Talk, where we talk all things personal finance and economics related. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And comment below, what do you think I've missed from this video?